In Colombia, political coalitions enroll their formulas for the May 29th presidential elections. The extraordinary summit of NATO states began in Brussels. The military alliance will assess new methods of supporting Ukraine and plans to deploy 4 new battalions in Europe. South African companies have been urged not to employ the undocumented foreign nationals to avoid tensions with citizens in the country, while the President Cyril Ramaphosa made a call asking nationals not to be at war with others for being un-South African. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the Telesur studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Colombia, the coalition Pacto Historico announced that the leader, Francia Marquez, will be the vice presidential running mate during the presidential elections scheduled for next May 29th. The presidential candidate for the coalition of the Colombian left, Gustavo Petro, provided this information during an event held for this purpose. Marquez was the second most voted presidential pre-candidate in the last consultation carried out by the Pacto Historico coalition, and the third in the 3 polls after Petro and Gutierrez. The now vice presidential candidate is a lawyer and also a social leader of the Department of Cauca with a broad career and backed by popular support. Let's continue in Colombia, this time with the registration of the candidacy of Sergio Fajardo, who made official on Wednesday his postulation to the presidency of the state after having obtained the highest number of votes in the consultation carried out by the coalition Centro Esperanza. Now let's move on to Venezuela, where President Nicolás Maduro highlighted the importance of the national production generated in the country. Regarding this, President stressed the importance of national production in different areas to diversify the productive economy in the face of the sanctions imposed by the United States. President Maduro also emphasized that the country plans to continue strengthening its self-sufficiency with local supplies and to promote the export of national products. Also, President Nicolás Maduro affirmed that the coercive measures imposed against Venezuela foresee overcoming of the oil rentier model.
The blockade accelerated the process of overcoming the oil rentier economy, the oil-dependent economy, and caused the emergence of a new diversified economy, not dependent on the oil rentier economy, a new economy with a virtuous circuit and cycles to produce food, goods, service, energy, to produce it with our own efforts. A country that was 100 years dependent of the oil export suddenly ran out of the oil export. For all the witnesses of the people, the witnesses of those who asked for criminal sanctions, we all know who they are, and they will be branded for 300 years in the history of Venezuela. Those who asked for the invasion of Venezuela, the criminal sanctions, and the blockade.
Now, Bolivian President Luis Arce led the acts for the Day of the Sea, ratifying his commitment to recover sovereign maritime access. The 143rd anniversary celebrations for the defense of Calama began with a wreath laying at the foot of the statue of Eduardo Baroa, hero of the War of the Pacific, a conflict set in the 19th century that defined Bolivia's landlocked status. The Bolivian president was accompanied by the Vice President David Choquehuanca, ministers of state, and some members of the diplomatic corps accredited in the country. During his speech, Arce recalled that the aggression that stripped them of their maritime territory responded to the imperialist interests of England over the natural resources of this region. Xi Jinping, the Communist Party of China's Secretary General and Chinese President, sent a congratulation letter to the Fourth Theory Seminar between the CPC and the Communist Party of Cuba, PCC. Xi said in his letter that CPC united and led the Chinese people in scoring historic achievements in reform and opening up. He stated that the PCC's 8th Congress conducted strategic planning for Cuba's development, building socialism featuring prosperity, democracy, and sustainability. Roberto Morales Ojeda, a PCC Central Committee Political Bureau member, spoke highly of China's splendid achievements, saying that his party is willing to strengthen experiences exchanges with the CPC, promote cooperation with China in various fields, and jointly push forward bilateral relations and the development of socialist cause. Many young people in Cuba are betting on starting businesses thanks to the opportunities that the country opened up for self-employment and new forms of non-state management. Many of these ventures also contribute to the production of goods and services of basic necessity for the population. From Havana, our correspondent Lisandra Andres has more details.
Fabian Menendez has his workshop in this 500 square meter rented space. The carpenter graduated from the craft schools from the Office of the Historian City in Havana. A year ago, he saw the possibility of opening Familia, his family businesses.
I decided to make my life project here in the country because a series of changes are taking place and a series of possibilities are opening up for young people like me to start businesses, whether in the private or state sector, and feel motivated to stay in the country, to make their life project, to contribute to society with what they know, with what they learn.
The workshop has a wide range of services, but they prioritize one with the highest social impact: the manufacture of technical aids for the elderly or people with walking difficulties, canes, walkers, sanitary chairs, all highly demanded in the country and with a lack of supply in the state market. However, access to raw materials and the purchase of foreign currencies are obstacles that affect both the price and the scope of these products.
The main challenge we are facing is the acquisition of foreign currency for the purchase of new raw materials, because everything is exported, everything is in dollars, in hard currency. So this is one of the things that hits the entrepreneur of any business very hard, because there are companies that import everything, and then depending on the business you have, you need to have the hard currency to be able to make any purchase of them.
Famea is a very young project. Joel Rondon, one of the founders, is the one who takes on the challenge of manufacturing about 90% of the technical aids, devices that are made of adaptable materials around the world, while here they are made of wood, but with designs both light and strong at the same time.
He's helping other people who need any technical help so they can walk and move around, and he feels good about that. And he is also teaching and supporting the learning of the kids at the workshop school who don't know. And he also feels identified with those older people who have some condition. And he knows that with what he's doing, he's helping them to have a very quality of life.
And with their hands, they help people like Sylvia to find the products she needs to care for her bedridden mother. As soon as I saw this possibility, I said, this is a solution to my problems and to solve the problem for her, to make everything easier for her. In Cuba, with the population aging rate close to 22%, the high life expectancy can be translated as an achievement of the social system. However, this implies challenges to guarantee quality of life for the elderly.
The concept with my son and the workers here is not to profit from the pain of others. So we try to keep the prices to a minimum, to cover expenses because they have to cover them. They have to cover salaries, electricity, raw materials, they have to cover all that. But the profit margin is really minimal. But we compensate it with other products and services we have to make the technical aids more affordable for the people who need them.
Familia will soon become a new form of a non-state management as part of the government's policy of giving way to new economic actors that can contribute with the products and services in high demand to the island's domestic market.
Lisandra Andrés, Telesur, La Habana, Cuba.
We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, welcome back to From the South. We update the latest from Brussels as the extraordinary summit of NATO states has already begun and intends to assess new methods of supporting Ukraine and plans to deploy 4 new battalions in Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia. The heads of state and government of the 30 allies are meeting in Brussels to show unity in the face of what they call a Russian aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will also take part in the meeting by video conference. At the start of the meeting, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said they were united in condemning the Kremlin's aggression and said they were determined to continue to impose sanctions and punishments on Russia. Shortly before the start of the summit, Germany confirmed that it is impossible for it to immediately impose embargoes on Russian coal, oil and gas, a matter which will also be discussed at the EU summit today. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered on Wednesday to accept payment for the supply of Russian natural gas to Europe only in rubles. The Russian president stated that his country will continue to supply gas at prices and volumes fixed in earlier contracts. However, he stated that they will not accept payments in discredited currencies, including dollars and euros, allowing only payments in rubles. This measure is a response to the illegitimate decisions taken by several Western countries in recent weeks on the so-called freezing of Russian assets. Putin considered that with those actions, the West breached its obligations towards Russia and undermined confidence in their currencies. Following that, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continued as both sides acknowledged that negotiations, while still moving forward, yielded limited progress. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the purpose of Russia's special military operation is Ukraine's demilitarization and neutrality. Regarding the negotiations, Peskov noted that while there were substantial contents being discussed, the progress is slower than the Russian side expected. On the Ukrainian side, President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that talks are confrontational sometimes, but moving forwards. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on all parties to move from the battlefield to the negotiations table and bring an end to the conflict. On Wednesday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced the European Union's plans to significantly reduce gas imports from Russia. Von der Leyen said that she will meet with U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday to discuss the possibility of securing extra deliveries of liquefied natural gas from the United States for the 27-nation bloc. The official declared that the bloc is aiming at having a commitment for additional supplies from the United States for the next 2 winters. The bloc is looking at ways to end its dependence on Russian gas by diversifying suppliers. The EU imports 90% of the natural gas used to generate electricity, heat homes and supply industry, with Russia supplying almost 40% of gas and a quarter of its oil.
Second, by speeding up investment in energy efficiency. Everyone can contribute in reducing our dependency on Russian gas. And third, by diversifying our gas supply away from Russian gas towards reliable suppliers. Tomorrow, I will discuss with President Biden how to prioritize LNG deliveries from the United States to the European Union in the coming months. We are aiming at having a commitment for additional supplies for the next 2 winters.
The United Nations Security Council on Wednesday failed to approve a draft humanitarian resolution on Ukraine, which called for a ceasefire in the country through negotiations for the evacuation of civilians from conflict zones. The resolution on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine was prepared by Russia. The co-authors of the Russian draft were Belarus, North Korea, and Syria. The document reaffirmed the call on all parties to ensure the protection of civilians and to refrain from attacking, destroying, dismantling, and rendering unusable civilian property. It also strongly condemned the deliberate targeting of civilians and civilian objects, including the indiscriminate shelling, as well as the deployment of military installations and equipment in densely populated areas, and noted the need to ensure funding for UN humanitarian work.
Thank you, Madam President. At the outset, I wish to thank those countries who supported and co-sponsored this resolution. The vote, which just took place, has posed all of those for whom politicization of the humanitarian dossier is more important than assistance from the United Nations and the delivery of humanitarian assistance to vulnerable Ukrainians. We have heard today from some delegations, especially the U.S. delegation, that they do not wish to participate in any way that whatsoever in the resolution that was proposed by the Russian Federation. Then, in that case, why didn't you abstain from it? you could have voted against it. We understand perfectly well about the true motivation behind your abstention.
Shang Jun, Chinese ambassador to the United Nations, regret that Security Council did not adopt a resolution that could have ensured a step forward on the humanitarian crisis in the conflict.
It is regrettable that the Council was unable to reach the broadest possible agreement in the end. It is the shared wish of the international community for an immediate ceasefire, which is also China's strong expectation. We believe that along with promoting a ceasefire and stop the fighting, the Council should, at the same time, also respond to the humanitarian crisis in a positive, pragmatic and constructive manner. China's vote in favor of the draft death resolution was based on our call for the international community to attack high importance to the humanitarian issue in Ukraine and offer the parties concerned to strengthen coordination on humanitarian issues so as to effectively protect the safety of civilians, especially women, children and other vulnerable groups.
In Ukraine, due to the conflict, the civilian population are making massive gun purchases. On Wednesday, the rush for guns and gun training continued in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. From 700 kinds of weapons offered in gun business before Russia's special military operation, now the amount down to 40, and the number of visitors at businesses increased 10 times, and almost all the new clients are interested in self-defense preparation. The supply of rifles and other hunting weapons from abroad became more difficult because logistics have been disrupted by the conflict. The state of the war meant gun purchasing in Ukraine streamlined, with a month-long permit procedure now simplified down to 2 days. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. De pinga. Dale. Hi and welcome back. In South Africa, local companies have been urged not to employ undocumented foreign nationals to avoid tensions with citizens in the country. On Monday, President Cyril Ramaphosa made a call in Coaster in the northwest during the official commemoration of Human Rights Day, asking nationals not to be at war with others for being un-South African. Nowadays, South Africa hosts the largest number of asylum seekers on the African continent due to its middle-income status and industrialized economy. According to estimates, the country is home to about 2.9 million foreigners, which would account for slightly less than 5% of the overall population of 60 million. Earlier this month, residents in Alexandra City embarked on the so-called Dudula campaign. The protest action targeted undocumented foreign nationals in the township. Ramaphosa condemned that campaign at the time, describing it as against South Africa's values, and warned that such actions could lead to vigilantism. In Kenya, nearly 840,000 vaccines against COVID-19 have expired even before they could be administered to the population. The Kenyan government announced in a statement the vaccines are those that were received through donations, deploring a persistent lack of confidence in vaccination as well as the short life of the doses. According to the Health Ministry's statement, these are AstraZeneca vaccines received through the Global COVAX initiative. About 30% of the targeted population in that country have received jabs against COVID-19. The ministry says that the administration of second doses has dropped significantly, and some refuse certain vaccines. Kenya received a total of more than 27 million vaccines, but has only administered about 17.3 million. Over 1,000 people marched in some 60 Spanish cities, a demonstration called by the two main trade unions, the Workers' Commissions and the General Union of Workers. The strike includes workers sectors such as lorry drivers, farmers, fishermen, and backed by consumer groups. The unrest came as Spain saw consumer prices surge to their highest level in almost 35 years, with inflation jumping to 7.6% and soaring energy costs worsened by Ukraine's conflict and Western sanctions on Russia. Rally organizers warned that the consequences for both households and people's economies could be serious.
We need a clear limit that doesn't allow prices to show up due to speculation and doesn't allow electricity companies to have what they are having, exorbitant benefits at the expense of all the families and workers in this country that have to see themselves paying bills that they can't pay at the end of the month.
Now with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at Telstar English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telstar English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.